Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Nu-Trix, the synth guy, about iPad synthesizers. Today I'm testing out Digital D1 from AudioKit, and we'll do a quick tour of what it is, a review of what you expect out of it, and we'll listen to some of the sounds. In a later video I'll do a in-depth guided tour of the synthesis and the extra features that you can find in it. So today let's start with a review. First of all, it's made by the same people who gave us SYNTH ONE, the amazing free synth that came out this summer. AudioKit is a cool project, and in this case, they sell it now. It costs some money, but you'll see that there's a reason why. It sounds good, and I mean, at one point you need to pay people for what they do, so I find it normal. They announce it, or they coin it as an hybrid synth, and it's totally true because the synthesis it uses, it's a mix. You can either have an oscillator that is a virtual analog oscillator or a PCM sample that you play back. So you cannot put your own samples, and I'll explain a little bit about how it works, but you cannot put your own samples. But how they actually present it is that they say it is inspired by the 80s and 90s synth that have these this sound, this slush, clean, high-end, high frequency type of sound. This synthesizer from the get-go, I'll tell you, sounds amazing on strings, lush pads, wide sounds, and you can do almost everything with it. But it's made to do, I would say, strings, pads, more like ambient sounds. You can do bass and pianos and I would say electric pianos and clavs and stuff like that. And they sound amazing. They sound really good. Of course, the internal synthesis, you can do, analog bassline if you want to. And there's an arpeggiator and a step sequencer, a 16-step sequencer. So it's, possible to do more analog stuff, but it is made to sound lush and pad and wide. So that's the reason, if you want to use this synth, I think it's the first reason is basically you want these just huge, massive, wide sound. And it sounds really nice. So we'll listen to that. First of all, just go into the technical aspect. You can play back up to 64 voices. Now, for me, it's just overkill because 64, I've got two hands. If I play the two at the same time, I've got 10 notes. I can have 2 notes of each because you have layers. So you can have 20 notes. Okay, you can actually split, but if you split, you're still going to be 10 and 10 or 20 and 20, so it's still going to be 40. So I don't know how you get to use really to maximize to 64, but then it means that you won't hear your notes stopping because you're playing too much notes at the same time. So it's cool, but I'm curious to understand how they pick up that number of 64. Maybe just because they could, or maybe they didn't like the fact sometimes when you play a lot of notes, you hear a note stopping because you're stealing voices from another sound. But that's another story. Anyway, at 64, you're good to go. So it sounds really nice. It's a dual layer synth, so you've got 2 layers of sound, and each of them have their own envelope, ADSR, their own filter with ADSR. There's 3 LFOs that can be assigned to whatever you want. So the matrix for the LFOs is quite complete and a very nice one. You have filters, separate ones for the layers, and there's like 2 other ones. You've got effects, tons of them. The distortion is a little bit, well, it's more digital than anything else. But the reverb, the chorus, the widening effects, so it sounds wide and lush, are really good. So that's really cool. And I think that the most important part of the aspect of synthesis in this app is really the choice of PCM samples that they actually use. Now, we have to explain a little bit what PCM samples are. If you go back to the 90s and the 80s synthesizers, if you think about something like the JD990, the D50, the Wave Station, the JV1080, 2080 and stuff like that, these were synthesizers. Some of them used some type of virtual analog that were not as advanced as today's virtual analog, but most of them used PCM Samples. So the company would actually record, let's say, a piano sound, different notes. So when you play the keys, you would have a sample at different places on the keyboard, and they would optimize it. So it takes the whole keyboards to sound like a real piano, or more like a real piano than analog synthesizers would. And they would be able to play many notes compared to analog synthesizers who were mostly monophonic and a little bit polyphonic, but you know, not that much notes. So the only way to have more oscillators would to actually have new cards. So some of them had cards you can just glide in, you know, slide in the card, and you would have new sample wave file to actually work with. Or these were actually, you would unscrew the top of the device and add internal memory that you usually would have new samples of sometimes drum sounds also. Like I have a JV2080 and you have drum sounds, plus you've got all these, you know, piano, violin, bass, voice, whatever you want in it. And if you wanted to buy, I don't know, the orchestral pack, you would have a ROM card with PCM samples that they all cleaned up, prepared, and all that stuff. You would put that in, and then you would have access to this new, you know, wealth of patches and raw sounds you can play with. So it was really interesting. And that's how they approached this one. So they actually did their own PCM. So they did not sample the D50 or the classic 90s and 80s synthesizers, but they did their own sound, and most of them you hear that they're made to sound like the 80s and 90s, and a lot of them they're made to recreate the sound that you had at that point. So if you're a 80s and 90s lover for this type of sound, you can get in the synth. And honestly, even if you're not, I'm pretty sure you're going to like the sound of this, because the pads, they just are nice, you know. So what we'll do now, we'll listen to the sound, and then you'll know by yourself if you like it or not. The D1, the main window, you have basic stuff, the reverb, phase, phaser, and stereo delay right away. You get the keys. I actually am using Bluetooth to connect to my Roland keyboard here. And you've got the oscilloscope in the middle, which I really adore. I like the fact that you have this. Now, if you have a keyboard like I do, you can actually click on this. The keyboard takes less screen space, and then you've got a lot of information. You've got, that in this way, main and some of the effects right away. Let's listen to the sounds. Whatever. Listen to another one. And waiting, you hear all that movement. I'm playing slowly because I want you to hear the evolution of the sound. So what you have here is actually two layers playing. And if you go into the sequencer, one layer, layer 1, is assigned to the kind of the tam-tam or percussion sound. So on one you're playing the instrument, the one you have a percussion following you. So that's what I'm saying when this is really powerful, and this mimics a lot of what we found in the 90s and 80s. And again, you go to the sequencer is there. So when you change the mod wheel, you're changing the mix between layer 1 and 2. You have it here. So you go from this with this kind of a mysterious sound. It's pretty interesting. Again, sequencer is doing its part on only one of the two. So we're at all. Let's go. There's keys that we had a little bit earlier. Survivor synth. You have these. So a lot of keys, LA synth, so the D50 and all that. So there's a lot of them. There's more than 400 samples, or not samples, but patches right into this. So it's really, you start with something really nice. Let's go into the pads. Let's go to the end just to see what else we have. Like that. These are more classic brass sounds and the orchestral sound. But they're really synthesis, you know, they're really synthetic. So they're still Let's go into leads. There's just a ton of them. But the pads are just, they just sound. Get into the arpeggiator now. Okay, we know where that comes from. Okay. So it's really interesting. Like I said, you can do a lot of things with it. It's really powerful, and then you get your favorites, you get your banks. Sorry. Another banks here, and then you use your bank. You can create your own stuff. And then there's banks of known people, other synthesis head that created banks. So you can do bass line that sounds really analog with it. That's what I said earlier. But when you do that, you're not using the lush sound that it has, but it can do like we have here, or this one here. It sounds really juicy analog bass, so it's really cool. So the wealth of sound you can create with this is really fun. It's really really fun, and the amount of sound you get out of this, the preset you get with it, is just amazing. That's my quick tour. That's it for the review and the playback of some of the sounds. Now, I personally really like the sound of this synth. It sounds lush, wide, big, and still, if you want to do something more bass line with, you know, step sequencer, or a step sequencer that plays a bass line with a pad on top, it is the stuff we did with the JV2080 and stuff like that. So it's really fun for that. You can even have a split. So you can have this one split in two and have one. You can select which part of the keyboard's notes are assigned to layer 1 and layer 2. So you can have an upper and lower, and have a bass and a pad and play the two separately. So that's also another way to use this synth, which is interesting. In my next video, I'll do an in-depth guided tour of the synthesis of the D1 and explain how to use each part to tweak the sound the way you want. Don't start from scratch, because it's really powerful. Start with the sound you like and tweak them so they become more yours, basically. There's a lot of really good sound you can start from in there, or of course you can start from scratch if you want, but by default, pick one that you like and bring it to the level you want for your song, and that's it. I really like Digital D1. Sounds good, reacts well, and I know there's an update right now, but I did my video before the update. So I'll do the update and I'll keep you informed on the next video. If you like what I'm doing, thumb up, click on the notification bell to get notified every time I release a new video. And if you like what I'm doing, share it with your friends, tell them to watch my videos and ask me questions. It's one of the best ways for me to know what video you would like to have. And if I can answer, if I can demo what you're asking for, I will gladly do it. That's it. See you soon. Cheers.